All right, we're going to get through the next bunch of these players. We're going to go to Kentucky, and we're going to look at Justin Edwards, a guy, Leaf, who at the start of the season, much like we talked about the early returns or the early thoughts on Zachary Ricochet, Edwards' name was thrown out by people as maybe this guy in a weight class is the number one overall pick. And now I can't think of a prospect with more crickets associated with their name than Edwards at the moment. Like, first of all, like he's at Kentucky, we know there's a thing that has happened for years and years and years of players at Kentucky's minutes, roles, skills, stats, whatever being somewhat suppressed. How much of the Edwards disappearance is a Kentucky-related thing, or is it just like, oh, maybe we just got it wrong heading into college?
I think people are wrong because if you listen to Locked On NBA Big Board, I make this point frequently. If you watch his high school tape, he didn't do anything that resembled the guys you typically associate with even top 10 picks, much less number one picks. What he did was he was stronger than guys, but he was a 20-year-old senior in high school, and he was stronger, and so he bullied his way to the rim, but there was no finesse, there was no explosion, so you had to be like an unbelievable athlete to have that lack of skill put you even in that conversation. So I thought it was crazy to have him even in the top 10 entering this year. So maybe I was in the minority in that assessment, but as I watched him play for Kentucky, I kept thinking to myself, man, he can't dribble. He can't shoot. Like there's these things, but he turned into a decent shooter. Like his shot came around. He shot 38%, but I think he was kind of a dare shooter for a decent amount of that. And then you'd say, okay, well, if he can shoot 38% and he had those accolades coming out of high school, maybe there's a kind of that reclamation project pathway for him to be a good player in the NBA as a 3-and-D. Rather than a star, but a 3-and-D. And I would argue that his 32-inch max vertical would demonstrate the athletic lack of prowess. And then the shooting, I like I said, I don't think is all that great. So you'd really have to believe in his being older, being more ready to contribute than I think he is, because typically when you draft someone that's older, they've played a lot of college basketball. They're more well-defined. Their roles are more clear. So I'm pretty out on Justin Edwards. I thought athletically he'd have to test spectacularly to put himself back within that first-round range that some people had him in. I think his shot looked better in person than I anticipated it doing, but I'd be pretty hesitant to use a first-round pick on Justin Edwards.
His field goal, strong, good free throws, good three-point attempt rate. He's not a high-usage player. The age thing is something that I bang on about all the time when you talk about it as an older player beating up on high schoolers, like as a freshman who's going to be 21 when the NBA season starts. Like, this stuff matters. Like, it's all context related. I say that a lot about some of the guys who are going to be like 23 playing against 18-year-olds in college. Like, if you're not beating them up, like, what are you doing? Then you shouldn't be even anywhere near this discussion of being a draftable player. That's what you're expected to. It's like a third-year player playing summer league. Like, if you don't dominate, then we're going to have some questions. And that is a pretty sizable red flag in a lot of these scenarios for someone like a Justin Edwards or whichever other player it is. There are certain guys that always stick in my head as these highly regarded high school players, preseason top 5 picks, who then coincidentally all seem to have the same sort of measurables as what Justin Edwards does here, and they do nothing. And the two that mainly come to mind at the moment for me are Cam Reddish and Nasir Little, who both came in with really high rankings heading into college. Both did really nothing at a college level. Both still got drafted in the first round, and I would say that the way that they played in college has represented how maybe they didn't deserve that first round pick, and they're playing the NBA is not quite there. Is that a similar sort of, like, again, we're talking like shapes of pathways of guys. Do you see a similar sort of thing there with Edwards, of that, just that high school ranking being so sticky that it just keeps giving that extra chance that others wouldn't get?
I think in the case of Cam Reddish, he committed to a team in Duke that had players that were at similar positions that were better than him, and that stunted his growth and, more importantly, probably stunted his confidence. And in the case of Nasir Little, I think he's a better athlete than Justin Edwards, but Edwards is a better shooter and taller. Nasir Little was probably a power forward at his entire life and then ended up being 6'6", and it's not all that useful in the NBA. I do think Edwards is going to get chances because he's with Clutch Sports. I think going to Kentucky gets you some leeway from NBA teams, and his prowess in high school is going to say, okay, well, maybe he can kind of find some of that again. And I think there is something to be said that high school tape needs to be evaluated. Like, I really like Jaden McDaniels, and now it's easy to take a victory lap over that. But I've been complaining for years as a Jazz fan that that's who I really wanted, even more than Desmond Bane, because that's what the Jazz needed at that time. Well, if you looked at Jaden McDaniels, like, yes, his shooting's not been good, but you knew there was offensive talent if you watched him in high school. And you knew there was this athleticism despite what he showed at Washington. Washington was different because he was a zone player. So I think there is credence to high school tape, but I don't think his high school tape actually shows things that are helpful to an NBA thing. So, yes, maybe he does get an extra view because he was a good high school recruit, but I think his stock's going to drop because of his lack of athleticism unless he shoots the cover off the ball at team workouts.
But firstly, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the job. That doesn't mean hiring scouts for an NBA team or a GM who doesn't know what he's doing. It's about getting the right person into your business. And the best way to do that is with LinkedIn Jobs. It's not just a job board. It's LinkedIn. You know, there's a billion people, a billion professionals on LinkedIn. So you can put your job right under their noses. They can smell it, they can get into it, and they can really see whether it fits them. And small business owners report that they can get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Is it 86 or 84? No, it's actually 86% of the time. I'll almost shortchange them 2% on that. That is how successful LinkedIn Jobs is. So go ahead and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.